5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In the dead silence of the morning, at 5:29:45 Mountain War time, the Jornada del Muerto was bathed in an intense flash of a light that man had only seen from the stars.
Not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Indeed, we are it. It's January 26, 2022. In 2013, they had 1,000 tanks in Fukushima Daiichi nuclear meltdown site. In 2021, they had 1,000 tanks. 1,000 tanks. So we have a poll tonight. Japan had 1,000 tanks in 2023, 1,000 tanks in 2022, because it's still the same this year. Has Japan been filling tanks for the last 9 years? And then the only conclusion you can come to, obviously, is that they haven't. And where's the poll, Dana? Yeah, hang on a second. Sleeping on the job here tonight. I'll get it. I forgot to plug in the external, and because I was thinking about how I like to see 1,000 nuclear scientists in particular go on trial for crimes against humanity. Forgot to plug in the external computer. It happens. Japan has 1,000 tanks in 2022, 1,000 tanks in 2013. So subtract the 1,000 tanks from 1,000 tanks. Now on my calculator, I got a 0. So Japan has not filled any tanks in the last 9 years because they love you so much. I show you what they're like for lying. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around it sometimes. Fukushima reactor leak plugged with liquid glass. What's that, you ask? It's a mixture of sawdust and newspaper and glue. And they fixed it. The leak was plugged with sawdust and newspaper and glue. It's amazing, isn't it, that they can plug something like that, a nuclear meltdown, with sawdust, newspaper, and glue. This is what you're up against. It's a perpetual lie. No nuclear scientist came out and said, that's ridiculous. They probably framed it on their kitchen walls. Japan, Fukushima Food, don't worry about Fukushima Food only. You have to worry about all 14 prefectures because that's what 55 countries had banned. And you can see how despicable this despicable country is. It lets their idiots farm food, harvest it right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. Are you really going to put some fate into a country that lets that happen? I say we should bomb the country with nuclear weapons to get rid of them. It's just an opinion. If they're not going to stand up and stop the genocide, then fuck all of them. Clear of nuclear. Japanese government urges support for UK proposed lift of Fukushima import restrictions. This is where they want to import food from all the prefectures. Canada only kept the ban in place for 93 days. Till June the 14th, 2011. Never bothered telling the Canadians. And then they looted the taxpayers with $13 billion for Darlington nuclear power plant, $13 billion for Pickering nuclear power plants upgrades. It's the whole industry is a 100% death cult. It cares about nothing, only itself. It really cares about nothing. Everything is their enemy as far as they're concerned. They're the nuclear industry. Importing food into a country is a genocide from a nuclear wasteland. And we should go to war against them with nuclear weapons and bomb them out of existence for what they got done. There should be retribution. And so we're no longer calling for anything but the destruction of Japan. The world needs to destroy Japan. I don't care if you do it with conventional bombs or atomic bombs, but that country needs to go for poisoning every country on the planet on purpose by growing food in a nuclear wasteland. Does anybody disagree that they're growing food and selling it in a nuclear wasteland? Beer made with Fukushima Rice launched in HK. Too much of a degenerate to put the word Hong Kong there. But they got to come out and revel in the misery that they're going to create anyway. Beer made with Fukushima Rice. It's the worst possible news imaginable. There's such an arrogant, despicable country, and you can see it in their media on top of that. A lunatic brewery in scumbag Hong Kong has unveiled a craft beer made with rice grown in a nuclear wasteland. And HK restricts imports of many agricultural products, but rice is allowed in. Like, the first thing you want to restrict is rice. The very first thing in a nuclear accident you want to get. Japan produces so much rice. So what they do is they can't get it into a country. They replace the people that make the decisions with pro-nuclear community in increments over a couple of years, and voila! Of course, in Canada, they never had any resistance whatsoever. Everybody in the Canadian nuclear industry's time is coming, I can guarantee you. I guarantee to you, the Canadians at some point in the near future are going to use baseball bats on that a lot. But rice is allowed in. It just doesn't even seem real, does it? So they're going to make beer because, hey, the rice is allowed in. And this is the brand Laughing, or whatever the hell it is. One of the words is laughing. The beer is to be sold at events promoting food from the nuclear wasteland. Try making that up on your own. And the head of the HK office says he wants people there to learn about the rice brand. The Japanese Hong Kong office. So it will lead them to buy other deadly foods from the despicable prefecture known as Fukushima. So we got 1,000 tanks 2013, 1,000 tanks 2022. Has Japan been filling tanks for the last 9 years? And the appropriate answer is no. You can count on the nuclear industry to come in. We may not be able to live in Japan someday. Or if you have the same nuclear accident in Canada, you may not be able to live in Canada someday. If you have the same accident in the United States, we may not be able to live in the United States someday. And you should change that to, we will not be able to live in Japan someday. We will not be able to live in Canada someday because of Japan. And radiation is going to be flowing out to long past the human experience. Long-term study of the transfer of cesiums and 90 strontium from Chernobyl contaminated soil to grain crops. So they know it transfers. They have no illusions about it. The first thing they check in your countries is mushrooms, because that's literally the worst thing you can eat today. They're wicked for bioaccumulating radioactivity. They're almost as bad as mussels, like shellfish, mussels, or scallops, or oysters, or something like that, because they'll bioaccumulate 115,000 or something, the background, or the dose that they're living in, because they're filter feeders. And what I mean by that is they'll do it in a very short period of time, almost right away. And this is why you see the mass die-offs of them all along the west coast of the northern hemisphere. Radioactivity in mushrooms in northeast Italy following the Chernobyl. Highly radioactive Chernobyl deposits in Scandinavian glaciers. Thyroid cancers in children and young adults in the north of England. Is it related to Chernobyl? Or is it because it's just a couple of miles from the Sellafield nuclear meltdown? Is it because of Sellafield? Because they're blaming it on Chernobyl. It's United Kingdom, remember? If it's coming from the United Kingdom, you got to scrutinize every word, because the nuclear industry and the government and the universities down there in the media is just revolting. It's revolting. It's like the media and the news and the government, so-called officials, and the nuclear industry in the United Kingdom are unbelievably revolting a lot. These are despicable people. These are the worst of the worst will get that job. Thyroid cancers in children and young adults in the north of England. Now, they closed 9,000 farms in Ireland and Scotland and UK because of Chernobyl, so they definitely had it. But the studies are done right alongside of Windscale. Well, it's not Windscale no more. They changed the name after what they done there to Sellafield to hide the crimes against humanity. When they had a nuclear meltdown, they went out and kidnapped people from the theaters, not from nuclear corporations or other nuclear power plants or nuclear universities. No. They went and got the homeless and the destitute. They got, because back in those days, in the 50s, the only poor people sat in the back of the theaters, right? Thyroid cancers in children. Followed New York after Chernobyl. IAEA today admitted there's no such thing as a safe level of radiation. And unbelievably, that standards are based on benefit, not safety. So they're not even on the anthropogenic man-made radiation. Just want to go punch them out, right? Whoever done that, you just want to get them by the fucking neck and start punching their teeth out of their face till they look like a cartoon. You really do. I mean, that's what you should do on this planet. That's what should have been done. But I think it'd been better with the butt of a baseball bat, personally, whoever made that fucking decision. You despicable piece of shit. which is United Nations, by the way. Concentrations of radiocesium in Italian wheat and its products in Italy. Why are you doing a study on radiation from Chernobyl in Italy, Dana? Oh, the same reason they're doing one on the Nordic population via diet intake. Or, in Greece. It's a disgusting industry. It's a revolting industry. It's genocidal, ecocidal, omnicide industry. Has zero attributes for goodness. Zero. Average person in Seattle breathed in 10 hot particles a day. Nuclear scientists everywhere were giddy with laughter. Even though they were children and they were breathing it in too. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. So 10 hot particles a day every day is, you were lucky if that's all you were breathing, and that's brutal doses. For all species, not just humans. Concern over uranium and plutonium being deposited, reconcentrated far away. The wonderful attributes of nuclear. The isotopes are liberated from the ocean through sea spray, aerosol, flooding, and humans get incredible doses by inhalation, food, and contact. So does insects and birds and animals and mammals, by the way. ARI can still only include humans. That kind of hubris is incredible. Radioactivity from cesium-137 in plant drugs. Try wrapping your mind around that. Because you use plants to make pharmaceuticals and they're radioactive because of fucking nuclear. Carbon-free nuclear. Someone ever come up to me and tells me nuclear is carbon-free? Everybody be calling them a pirate for the rest of their life. Radioactivity in fungi in Slovenia, mushrooms. In Yugoslavia, following Chernobyl. They know food sucks up the radiation. That's why nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, because they fucking love you. They love to kill you. They can't wait. They want you to eat the food from the farms. Just eat the food from the farms, get sick and fuck off and die. That's what the nuclear industry thinks of you. And their own children and friends and families. This is a future sizable B in the United Kingdom, I think. Right in the middle of farmland, right? It's got to be in farmland, or you can't have a nuclear power plant there, or a nuclear dump. All nuclear dumps are surrounded by farmlands. All nuclear power plants are surrounded by farmlands. You know why? Because they don't fucking like you. They don't like you at all. They don't like your children. They don't like your friends. They don't like your family. They don't even like their own family. They're degenerate cowards and scum, and should be made to eat all the food at Fukushima so we can get rid of them. Time-dependent transport of Chernobyl radioactivity between atmospheric and, because they narrow it down so a lot of people, there's so many different studies on so many different ways that plants and food is sucking up the radiation. It's absurd that these places are built surrounded by farms, built on farmlands. I know what they're going to tell you. They're going to say, look, we told them you shouldn't put your farm there because there's a nuclear power plant. But they built the farms there, Dana. No. You came there, bought the farmland, and built a nuclear power plant. The industry is unbelievable cowards. It's an unbelievable coward, idiot industry. They got a bachelor degree in stupid. The influence post-Chernobyl fallout, birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. High concentrations of hot particles, not from Chernobyl, but Fukushima. And that's cesium or iodine, but plutonium and americium. all of the western U.S. and most of the East Coast, Canada, covered with airborne particulates at various altitudes based solely on number one, explosion. Calgary Sun, no need to panic, probably, about the Fukushima fallout that rained on Canada. Never stopped, by the way. The government wasn't releasing the data, and 90 days later, they imported food from a nuclear wasteland that still hadn't even picked up a single bag. The farmers were the only people checking for radiation in the food on top of that. The farmers were given defective Geiger counters and they were checking it for 500 becquerels a kilogram of just gamma. No alpha, no beta, no neutrons. And these Geiger counters were given to people who didn't know what they were doing. And shortly after that, a group of scum degenerates known as Safecast showed up. And they're going to be the activists. And they brought in tens of thousands of fake homemade Geiger counters, shit Geiger counters, that at best can only detect about 1/600 of the gamma emissions. No detecting of alpha or beta or neutrons whatsoever. And then the Japanese government used their documentation to set policies. This was Safecast. And now they've blown up into a huge corporation worth multi-billions of dollars, and everybody who pulled the scam got filthy fucking rich off it. And now they have expanded almost in every country worldwide in the last 11 years. Heaven help us if we have another nuclear accident. Guess who's going to show up right away? New type of Fukushima forecast shows radioactive cesium iodine over large sections of the United States and Canada. This is absurdness. Fukushima nuclear plume. And it looks like this, where it covers the whole friggin' planet in just, this one is 19 days. That model. This model is 20 days. If you let it run for another 10 days, you won't see anything else on that. This model is 16 days from France's government. Covers the whole planet in just 16 days. With absurd, endless, like, that'll take 100 years to rain out if it stopped right there. It didn't stop right there. And lying and pretend it didn't happen is not a solution. Fukushima nuclear plume, I just showed you 3 different official models of it. Canada suspends mobile radiation measurements around Vancouver, BC until further notice as the radioactive cloud looms. They moved it interior, but never started up till a year later or two. So they closed down the survey in Saanich Peninsula on the 22nd. 11 days later. The plume was obviously already here at this stage. In Victoria, scumbag Victoria, in Vancouver, British Columbia on the 24th of March. Haida Gwaii, which is formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands, on the 24th of March. And again in Vancouver on the 25th, because Vancouver is a city of multi-million people, right? Why the radioactive plume was coming in. Why there was an uninterrupted line of radiation stretching across. So normally you see a nuclear test go off, the plume is moving along. This covered the whole planet. You need to wake up. You need to gut up. Nobody else is going to do it unless you do it. April 16 forecast shows radioactive clouds stretching from Texas to Canada. Well, that model there is only running until the 16th. Let me see. Yep, 2011. The fort. Well, that's April 16th. Here's 20 days later, or 19 days later, 468 hours. This one right here. This is madness. This is the definition of madness. Like, my goodness. Nuclear was supposed to die right there on the spot, right? Health Canada calls 300 times background level, and the scumbags, like what they've done with the iodine 131 narrative over the last 70 years. Oh, iodine 131, and they got an 8-day half-life. Oh, is that right? So we're okay in a week or so? Yeah, you're okay in a week or so. Next person comes by. Iodine only got a 8-day half-life. And they say, well, what's a half-life? They say that there's 10 of them. I'm like, what? There's 10 of them. But what it really means is, because it's just a gamma, it's a nasty one, but what it really means is there's 1,000 different isotopes in that same sample. They're not telling you that. You'll demand an end to nuclear. Then they can't rape children and their pets anymore. New evidence has emerged that radiation in Canada was worse than the Canadian officials ever let on. Vancouver. Serious questions arise about why Canada government failed to alert the public. Not only that, they lifted the ban on food within 90 days. Within 90 days, while the Plume was still just pounding the entire planet at its peak. Reactors were still in full meltdown, hemorrhaging radiation. Every other country that was even had 2 eyeballs had banned all of Japan. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation you can imagine. That you see in a paper that says bye-bye Japan and should evacuate the North America west coast if Unit 4 goes after quake and the rods are exposed. The whole story is insane. So then you got this despicable piece of shit known as the IAEA, which is actually United Nations. No one died from radiation at Fukushima. Boss statement met with laughter at Constipated Party 26. If you do nothing, even Tokyo would become off limits. It's not the government, it's the fucking nuclear industry. Excuse the Canadian. He should have a fucking fuel rod stuck up his shitter and get rid of that piece of friggin' excrement permanently. You got any idea how evil that creature is? This man will sniff your bicycle seat on the drop of a hat, or your children's bicycle seat. Look at this Plume. Do you think that you're better than radiation? It's not going to affect you? You really think that if you live in the United States, this didn't fucking affect you and your children and your friends and your families? Or if you live here in the East Coast of Canada, you really fucking think that don't affect you? Are you really that delusional that you think that you're fucking smarter? So smart you didn't breathe air for the last almost 11 fucking years? And if you think if you're eating food from Japan that created all of this, that you're not going to get sick even quicker? I mean, you're talking about the whole planet in just 16 days. That's the 26th. Do you think it stopped there? That's France's map. I don't know if anybody knows how much I despise France. The coward of the cowards. Nuclear power generation, the only invention may destroy the future of humans. Fuel pools were at the top of the building. It doesn't actually exist. The structure they built there was to trick people. Tomorrow night we're going to cover this video that came out yesterday, where they got these ministers and media. Ogata Taro says we're at the topmost area in Unit 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi, not the Daiichi, but the Daiichi nuclear power plant. That picture is what he's showing you. In the topmost, the topmost is up there, above that, looking down on it. But that's the freaking building there. Look at the building. Do you think they're at the top of the building? Is there anybody on the planet that's actually remotely stupid enough that they would think that this despicable, disgusting parasite is at the top of the building? That's a fucking parasite. That's what that is. That's a parasite. That's a revolting, despicable, vicious parasite. That's exactly like the fucking seat sniffer. No one died of radiation, IAEA boss. Oh, it doesn't stop there, though. Remember, there was two of them going up the steps, right? Guess who the other one was? Hang on. The Minister of Economy, Trade and Industries in Unit 4. The core did not melt. The building actually looks like this. And so the structure, you see this panel? That's a single panel. They put a bunch of them on with the cranes, and they just slip on, and they're really heavy, and they hang there automatically because it was built off-site. And then they're going to pretend that it looks like that on the inside, and that they're up there. The Kino Masato Councilor, the Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry. This is absurdness. Pretending they're in a building that don't even exist. And I don't know about you, but that offends me that people would do something like that. And all your media done it to you. Now, why would all your media pretend that people are in a building that don't even exist? What could possibly be the catalyst to pretend you're in a building where all you done was put these tubes together, sacrificed 100 homeless, and mostly used cranes. You put panels on it, but the fuel pool is long gone. And when you finally get all your panels on it, you pretend that it's all hunky-dory. So they claim they're taking fuel out of the pool by a crane, dropping it into a cask. Then all of it moves over. They move the cask over. And then there's a truck parks underneath the building. And they lower the cask down into the back of the truck. And then the truck drives away. That's what they're claiming. They're up on top of that building, and that's what happened up there. The whole problem with that is Reactor 4 doesn't even exist. That's Reactor 4. Well, what's left of it. And because you had multiple nuclear meltdowns, you can't go inside of it. The structure was put there just to trick you. What kind of demonic, despicable industry would perpetrate a crime by pretending they're getting fuel out of a pool that don't exist, and why would they do it? I'm not going to answer that because I don't think you're fucking stupid. This is just to the people that's their first time ever seeing this. I don't think I need to explain to you that they're lying. If I do, then you're a waste of fucking life. If you think that it looks perfect inside of a building that don't exist, there's nobody on the planet can help you. It can't be both, right? I'm going to cover that more tomorrow night because that pisses me off something unbelievable. Nuclear is not competitive, and it's too late for the energy transition. Green Power CEO. Italian renewables giant obviously won't invest in nuclear due to long construction times and high costs, and it's a piece of shit industry. Factbox Gas and nuclear green, not so fast. Says investors, not scientists, not academics, not journalists, but investors. The main concern is almost one of the principal. Once you start to interfere politically in taxonomy, then actually you open the floodgates in terms of future political interference, which is why, in our view, it would be preferable that this delegated act wasn't set up the way it was and include nuclear and gas. In other words, include nuclear and gas in the EU taxonomy is shit for brain stuff. It's just a big scam. The expert says it's too costly, risky, unlikely to have a significant impact. And the comments were made in a joint statement by Dr. Gregory Jasko. And he used to be the regulatory head of the the NRC when Fukushima melted down. And I'll never forget the lies he originally told and the contempt that I got for him. Now he's going around trying to make a mint off Green, being Mr. Green, when he's still a scumbag, nuclear scumbag. He's right, but he doesn't. We don't get any acknowledgement. Any scum, degenerate monsters like him do. And he doesn't give you actual talking points you can use. Taiwan is still going at it. The KMT political party resolutely opposed the lifting of the Japanese food ban. And I'd done a show 3 or 4 shows back about how some of Taiwan's media was carrying out sedition against the country by sabotaging the country, importing of radioactive foods to poison the population so they can get a paycheck each Friday. The KMT on Wednesday expressed its resolute opposition to lifting Taiwan's ban on food imports from the scumbag Japanese prefectures that are contaminated from radioactive fallout, in the absence of what is called science-backed measures to guarantee the safety of such imported products. First off, you can't trust the scientific departments anymore. These are genocidal maniacs. All they've done is stabbed everybody and everything on the planet in the face and the back every time. When you turn, they're like predators. When you turn your back on them, they'll jump on you and stab you to death. Or they'll do it with the stroke of a pen, preferably, because they're cowards by nature. But there's a lot of pressure. Nuclear energy not a feasible way to tackle climate crisis. Former regulators. First off, the regulatory agency is by Congress. They're not regulators, they're appointees. Taiwan raises 100 tons of Philippines typhoon aid. 100 tons. To help the Philippines recover from the destructive super typhoon Ray. Super typhoon. Wrecked 1.5 million houses. Winds of 170 miles per hour, gusting well over 200 miles per hour. Do you have infrastructure in your community for 200 miles an hour wind? And you know what created that? This environment, because we've never seen that before, where it lands, when it comes to shore at those speeds, was the radioactive fallout from Japan covers the whole planet in 16 days, but it never stopped coming out. The plume got worse and worse. And it's pulsing energy at the speed of light. You call it climate change. It's radioactive fallout. So, like if you had a snowstorm, covered the whole planet in 16 days, and it never stopped for 11 years, you fucking get it then, wouldn't you? Because you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. It doesn't exist, apparently. Despite the fact my Geiger counter's screaming on every show. Everybody's la 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 la, we'll be okay. We were supposed to come up with solutions. Nuclear wasn't even supposed to exist. Its 75-year history is predicated upon how can we keep you in the dark? How do we keep you from understanding what we're doing to you? How do we keep you from recognizing that it's the nuclear industry that is wreaking havoc on this planet, not climate change? See, all the nuclear wars you had, you call them, I think you call them nuclear testing, was it? They were nuclear wars, the same bomb, the same radioactive fallout. All the little sheeple out there were like, no, we never had a nuclear war. Dana, go back and watch your fucking TV set, morons. Leave this for the big boys to talk about, and the big girls. Highly radioactive fuel debris remains in the reactors. Really? Wow, that's amazing. Never would have thought that. What are you, a genius or something? Can reactor fuel be safely removed from the Daiichi reactors? What are you talking about? The fuel, whatever fuel's left in the reactors is irrelevant. It's gone China syndrome, or it's covering the planet. It's still splitting the atom everywhere it's to on top of that. Which means endless perpetual misery machine for all species. Japanese food ban, the Taipei Times. These people should be arrested for sedition and hung publicly for what as a deterrent to other scumbag medias. Well, personally, it's just well to hang all the media. You know they're criminals. This is not an opinion. They write and leave their crimes all the time. The presidential office is yet to formally set a timetable for removing the ban. So they're the only major English printed newspaper in Taiwan, which speaks a lot of English, by the way, advocating constantly for the last couple of weeks of importing deadly foods from a nuclear wasteland. We need a plan to combat global warming. Letter to the editors. See, there's a lot of good people out there, but they don't understand the nuances. And the nuances in this capacity are incredibly important. Responding to the majority of U.S. states pursue nuclear power for emission cuts. That was an absolute public relation campaign. It wasn't true. It was a 100% public relation campaign. That story is still banging around out there today. The exact same headlines, all kinds of pro-nuclear medias. The majority of U.S. states, so all of a sudden, now they start flogging uranium stocks right away, right, just to rob everybody. It's a despicable industry. It's a murder industry. It's murder and corporate all over in a whole different scale. These are unbelievable criminal. It's a criminal network of cowards on top of that. Unbelievable cowards. So I don't think we in California should want nuclear power because of what happened in Fukushima and the fact that we live in an earthquake country. Furthermore, I'm quite sure that the nuclear power plant needs ocean water for cooling, blah, 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 blah. But it warms my heart to see people come out and say, no. See, waste, what nuclear waste is, and most people have no concept of nuclear waste, is it splits the atom. So in order to power 1 million homes, it's splitting the atom. And so most people think that that's the end of it. A few seconds later, the atoms disintegrate and they don't exist no more. No. And in fact, it's in a containment at that stage. But then you're going to take it out and put it in a pond for a decade or more because you got no repository on the planet. And by the way, when you open up the reactor, take out some fuel and change it, the radiation liberate into the environment. That's why when they do that, they shut down and they bring in 1,000, 1,200 external workers so they don't poison their normal workers. Right? And they always do it just before peak harvest in all the farms around these nuclear power plants on top of that. So the radiation that does end up close by gets sucked up into the food. And I showed you the studies earlier so you can appreciate that that's real. And then you go to the supermarket, buy it, and get sick and fucking die. Or your kids eat it and they get all kinds of diseases and illnesses. They got you, man. Because you won't stand up to them. You won't raise your voices. You won't form resistance. If Trump was out there, though, shows up, everybody got a voice magically. Fukushima Food Products Ban to be lifted soon. Which is not true, by the way. As I showed you earlier, Taiwan, this is about Taiwan. Taiwan hasn't implied that it's going to be lifting the ban. But setting the seeds of doubt in motions is a very important facet of trying to win that argument. There are reports that the Thai's administration in Taiwan will announce the lifting of the ban on imports of the Fukushima deadly, despicable food products. And they say that the premier did not deny the report when asked by a reporter. In the entire world right now, only Taiwan and China bans the import of food products from Fukushima and 4 surrounding prefectures. Yeah, United States just lifted all bans, and the United States media never fucking reported it a single time. Nothing. Japan's media came out and bragged about it for a couple of days, but a couple of days before that, the EU came out. And Japan media came out and bragged that EU just lifted the ban. No restrictions. Give it to her. Let's kill them all. From a nuclear wasteland. I can't wrap my mind around it. We got a poll here tonight, by the way. Japan had 1,000 tanks in 2013 and 1,000 tanks in 2022. So has Japan been filling tanks for the last 9 years? And surprisingly, a couple of people voted yes. Obviously, They know how to use a computer, but they don't know how to do math. How is that even possible? Legislators asked Foreign Minister Joseph Wu, scumbag Wu, whether lifting the ban will give Taiwan entry into the comprehensive and progressive agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. See how this works? Right, to bring up one question, and they say, well, you got to do it if you want to get in a Trans-Pacific Partnership with a nuclear wasteland. Just do your own partnership. You don't need friends like Japan. Nobody needs a friend like Japan. Do we have a need for radiated food products? Do we need to urgently import radioactive food products into Taiwan? And Joseph Wu, the Foreign Affairs Minister, said this precondition is wrong. We will keep all radiated food products outside. But that's the party line, not his, right? Global debate over nuclear power role in reducing greenhouse gases intensifies. There is no debate, if you're being honest, if you're going to use science. It's absurd. In 2021, you had 333 nuclear power plants where the renewables come online. The year before, you had 300 nuclear power plants where the renewables come online. In a 24-month period, you had 633 nuclear power plants of full capacities, large capacities, worth of renewable energy come online. France has still got 2 nuclear power plants that they're trying to build for 14 years, 15 years. And they're still long from getting them up and running. Long time in the future. There's only 2. We don't have the resources to build 600 nuclear power plants on the planet. And Jacko, you're a piece of shit. You're a despicable piece of shit. What you've done after Fukushima, you should be hung by the neck until dead, or you should be dropped into fucking Reactor 3 from a helicopter. Do not fear a nuclear power plant in your neighborhood. OpEd. This is India. Of course, India still has over 9,000 people were booked with sedition. For sedition, are still waiting trial. 9,000 people. That's a picture of them when they were arrested. And their crime was participating in a peaceful protest against establishing a degenerate scumbag nuclear power plant in their country. So 9,000 people protest the nuclear power plant and were set up on and beaten up and now had their life destroyed. They can't get a job because they're waiting to go into court. They can't go to university because they're waiting for court. They can't leave the country because they're waiting for court. They can't do anything because of the nuclear industry. So do not fear a nuclear power plant in your neighborhood. So that when your media pumps stuff like that, your media doesn't exist anymore. Your media hates your guts and is doing everything it can to destroy your future. Just so they can get a paycheck each Friday. Because they can't get a real job not being a monster. But they can easily get a job being a monster. And India is going to be surrounded by farms. If the central government agrees to build a nuclear power plant in your neighborhood, what will be your reaction? Many may support the decision. Looking at the past, there will be strong opposition as well. The possibility of releases of radioactivity during normal operations may be one reason for staying away from reactors. And radioactive releases may reach the environment only if several barriers break. That's simply not true. The fuel pools have no containment. It's the same fuel that you were using to power 1 million homes. And you put 2 million atoms that you split on the head of a needle and you can't see it. But distributed out, that's 2 million cancers. one at a time, one for each person. So if you got in order to produce power for 1 million homes, try to wrap your mind around how many Googles of isotopes you got to produce in order to power 1 million homes in 24 hours. So when you take the fuel out and put it in a fuel pool, it's still splitting the same atoms. It's not powering 1 million homes. It's going up a chimney and into those farmers' fields and around the planet looking for victims. It's the complete definition of evil. It's the most complete definition there is of evilness, is nuclear power and fuel pools in particular. There's 1,000 fuel pools on your planet. So every day you got 1,000 fuel pools that probably got 4 or 5 reactors in them that were each capable of powering 1 million homes. Each of them fuel pools are producing the same amount of atoms they would to power 1 million homes, but the atoms are going up the stacks and into your community. You tell me that's not fucking evil, and that'll be pulsing energy for millions of years. And tomorrow it'll do the exact same thing again, all brand new. It's like a brand new snowstorm all day, every day, of deadly isotopes into your environment forever. And they don't got a repository because that won't happen if he does that. So they found every way possible to keep it above the ground, hemorrhaging into the environment. Everything is vented. Everything is vented on top of that. It's a despicable industry. It's a scumbag industry. It attracts scumbags. Experts say nuclear energy as climate solution is total fiction. Well, it is. The central message repeated again and again and again and again and again that a new generation of nuclear will be clean and safe and smart and cheap. Too cheap to meter. Is fiction. The whole thing is just one big macabre of evilness. Workers walked near number 2 and number 3 reactor buildings. This is the pump house. This is the water side. This is not by reactor 2 and 3. These are not workers. These are the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language. And they're wearing paper suits. And TEPCO claims to burn 7,000 paper suits each day in their on-site incinerators, liberating the radiation back into the environment. And they're carrying paper bags exactly each with perfect paper suits on, with no dirt, no scratches, no tools. You can't work at a nuclear meltdown. You can get killed at one. I already done this video. What is the wall of ice at the Fukushima crippled nuclear plant? Crippled. People that write those words, crippled, should be crippled. Why didn't they build a real wall? Why would you build an ice wall? How do you get that stupid? Really. And I covered this last night. They said they had 260,000 people work on the ice wall. 260,000. And they were running into homeless in 2015. This is a lunatic industry. It has I've never found an actual story, and I picked up another 160 stories today, but I've never found an actual story. None of them I'm covering tonight, by the way. I've never found a story where they told the truth. This is the whole problem. This is why I do these shows, is every story is carefully crafted, by the way, apparently by the same people, because they use the same phrases so many times. It can't be an accident or a coincidence. Like Chernobyl, the world's worst nuclear accident. It's absurd to suggest it, but all the media knows to say it. It's absurd to even suggest it. It's a despicable, coward, monster industry exterminating our planet. Everybody's sitting around Like, how many people don't wipe their ass when they go to the toilet? Everybody, right? Nobody's that stupid. Functional, anyway. That is so stupid they don't wipe their butt when they go. I can talk about this on the nuclearproctologist.org. But, no but intended. But they don't have a concept that nuclear, the bad attributes of nuclear. But they know they've got to wipe their own ass before they pull their pants up. The nuclear industry probably doesn't wipe their own ass. They got somebody hired to do it for them, most likely. Can reactor fuel debris be removed safely from Fukushima? And so one thing we noticed with doing these shows 5 days a week typically, and aggregating the 24-hour news cycle year after year after fucking year, is we noticed these patterns of perpetual lies. There's the fuel pools right there, look, covering the whole planet in lethal radiation doses. Oh yeah, New Brunswick Power. Like, their last two extensions were 5 years each. And look at the fuck-ups in that period. Accident after accident, breakdown after breakdown, shutdown after shutdown. It's just like they had the most incompetent people on the planet. No matter what they done there, that's what they ended up doing. Of course, that's the nuclear industry. The current generation of people in the nuclear industry didn't design the reactors. They didn't build the reactors. They didn't launch the reactors. They came along long after, and they're working on that technology. Right? They're the inbreeds of the inbreeds of the inbreeds on top of that. The entitled lot, no doubt. New Brunswick now seeks a 25-year license for Point Le Pour nuclear power station. And its fuel pools are hemorrhaging into the Bay of Fundy. They're located at the Bay of Fundy on top of that, where tidal generation can put this nuclear power plant to bed overnight because it has a 50-foot tide exchange there every 5.5 hours. I actually worked out there as a diver temporarily because it was such a difficult spot to dive. Try diving in a 50-foot tide exchange zone. It's like diving in the middle of a great big river to change directions every 5.5 hours. It's like madness. You go down with a tank of air on, you come up 2 miles away. The tender boat would have to run the RPMs really high just to chase your bubbles. If there was any wind, they couldn't even see your bubbles. So you had to carry a float with a line to the surface so they can spot you. And they would be like high RPMs trying to keep up with you. Because you burn so much fuel every day, right? You couldn't put an anchor there because the diver couldn't stay in the same spot. New Brunswick, of course, they have a CANDU reactor. And their license is going to expire in June of this year. And so they're tired of doing a 5-year one. They want to do a 25-year one. But history has showed us you can't just give these people blank checks. You got to have checks and balances, and we don't actually got no functional checks and balances. And that's obvious when you see them do that. When they come out and say, well, we want we want a 25-year license. We're better than you. Because in 5 years' time, there's going to be 5,500 nuclear power plants where the renewables up and running online, according to the international energy agencies. So they know in 5 years' time, nobody's going to want to see that piece of shit another second. And the reason these reactors had a lifespan was because the neutron bombardments would make them brittle, and they're more susceptible to catastrophic damages because they're high PSI containments, right? They're 1,000 PSI to 2,200 PSI reactors. So if you got brittle material and you have an event where you get a crack into it At 1,000 psi, a crack becomes a detonation. So you know, it's your car tire. Go look up videos of a car tire blowing up at 35 psi. There's lots of videos out there. It'll frighten the daylights out of you. Imagine putting 1,000 psi in a big tire and blowing it up. Then think about these shitty genocidal nuclear power plants. These are disease factories. Once you start the fuel pool, baby, you need to move 50 to 100 miles away right away. You don't want to live within 50 or 100 miles of these disease factories. Well, the emissions goes right around the world, but the worst spot is going to be that 50 to 100 mile range. It's hellish. So much radioactivity. My Geiger counter won't pick up the majority of it. It's only going to, and that's an expensive one. It's only going to pick up gamma. The last two licenses to operate at New Brunswick Power shithole, located 40 kilometers southwest of St. John's, which means you can. How are you going to evacuate St. John's, New Brunswick? They probably haven't even got sirens there. They're that big of scumbags. They're asking for a 25-year license, which would be a first in Canada. You know, because in 5 years' time, you won't be necessary anymore, and you're trying to secure a evilness for another 25 years to kill off all your friends and families and loved ones, because you're a degenerate scumbags. There's no reliable performance. It breaks down all the freaking time, for God's sakes. They've already had to do 2 unscheduled refits on the fucking things. And not only that, your fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment 24 hours a day. You despicable creatures, you murderers. The plan to bury all of Canada's nuclear waste in one northwest Ontario town. Again, these are incredible degenerate scumbags. Now, they got the Nuclear Waste Management Organization was created in 2002, 20 years ago. And they figure in another 40 years, they might have a dump ready to start taking stuff. If they can find a community, and this is their words all the time, by the way, if they can find a community that will accept them. First off, you're probably never going to get a community to accept you, right? Because it's an instant controversy. Second off, you don't want to put it in a community because it's nuclear waste, you shit for brains. You incompetent scum. You don't want to put it, and all these places they're picking are prime farmlands with active farms. In fact, they bought 1,500 acres, and it was prime farmland in prime farmland, and they wanted people to keep farming while they put nuclear waste down in the hole for the next 40 years. There'd be several trucks a day going there if they decide to do it there. Everything is vented on the highways, and everything is vented when it gets there. Then everything is repackaged, meaning everything is vented again in prime farmland. See, this is not an accident. This is evilness. They don't need to do that. It's just evilness. It's just terrible people in positions of authority that have become so evil they don't even hide it anymore. When you build a nuclear power plant in farmland, you're not trying to hide how evil you are. It's the scientists that sat in silence and never warned people about the adverse side effects. No, say no to nuclear waste. Most of these science gets chopped down by the pro-nuclear scumbags. It's kind of dump for a high-level nuclear waste not been built anywhere in the world because they want to build it in your community. And they know that no one's going to want to do that, and that's exactly what they want. They want this continuous splitting the atom until they can guarantee nobody and nothing will survive in the future. That's what they're up to. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, but I can guarantee you it's not. Since Canada began using nuclear energy in the 1960s, Only solution for the waste produced has been temporarily. It is now being stored on-site at nuclear power plants, hemorrhaging, splitting the atom all day into the environment. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And then he rolled out our old friend, the witch. Remember, she used to be all grey hair? Alison McFarlane. She's now the director of the School of Public Policies and Global Affairs at the University of British Columbia. Right? They be a monster for a few years for the industry and get a key position where she can molest young male students. She's an actual monster, by the way. The way to think about all this stuff is in a relative sense, says the monster. You can't think in an absolute sense, because that's what monsters will say. So that you are comparing this to, what are you comparing a deep geological repository to? You're comparing it to leaving the material where it is right now, above ground, which is riskier. In my view, it's much riskier to leave it where it is, and we don't know that the institution that ensures that we're safe from it will continue. We don't know that if they don't continue, we do know if they don't continue the containers, that this material in will break down. They're all vented, and will get into the environment, and this will happen a hell of a lot faster than whatever would happen deep underground. She's professor and director of School of Public Policies. As an American, is the director of public policies in Canada. An American who poisoned all of her citizens and never warned them to get out of the way of the nuclear meltdowns. And that she don't articulate what the reason about, and of all people she knows, that the problem with nuclear waste is it's still splitting the atoms that's released in absurd snowstorms all day long, perpetual disease factories for the entire planet. And then he rolled out scumbags. That you just look at that face, you know, if you got my experience. Before I read who he was and what he does, I'm like, that's a scumbag, guarantee you. Because they all got that weird look, don't they? He's also a scumbag professor. First off, you know they're scumbag when you hear the word professor. Of applied physics and public policies at Harvard. And co-host of the Energy versus Climate podcast. He says, I think there's 4 big challenges for the nuclear power weapons proliferation. Cost of reactors, reactor safeties, and waste. And everybody you ask will have a different ranking of those. So for me personally, I would put waste at the bottom, the least important of those 4. Well, waste is the most important because waste is splitting the atoms into the environment. And you're a professor and you know better. And so you're a monster. You're a degenerate sack of shit. And I disrespect you, you piece of shit, you. And his partner in crime, a female piece of shit. A woman's place is murdering everybody with radiation. Sarah Hastings on the disproportionate cancers around nuclear waste. She is a professor of physics and public policy at the University of Calgary and co-host of the Energy versus Climate podcast, which promotes nuclear. It would be unfair to the nuclear industry to somehow imply that the problem of waste is a problem that they alone are failing to solve, when actually it's other industries that are also failing to solve it, in some ways even worse. Well, no, that's their job is to solve it. That's their job, see? And they don't try. They don't try. And the fact that you do I checked it out, by the way, the Energy versus Climate podcast. You're either stupid or you're a scumbag, and you could be both. Going green must include nuclear for the EU largest copper plant, which is a state-owned copper plant. Going green and you can't be green if you go nuclear, though. That's not green. Poisoning the whole fucking planet with radiation is somehow green. 260 plus companies demand big, bold action on clean energy. And I don't know where to go on this because I haven't had time to research the 260 companies. And because I've only once out of 1,000 stories will find tidbits of somebody in the nuclear industry that are honest, I got a tendency to label you as a fucking scumbag first, just to be on the safe side. And I'm rarely wrong. Only once in 1,000, apparently. New Brunswick Power seeks non-precedented 25-year license. Put them in jail and put somebody else in charge and decommission that shithole that is located in an incredible, important area. So you put a nuclear power plant, a scumbag nuclear power plant, in one of the most diverse places in human history. One of the most magical places, certainly in human history, is the Bay of Fundy. And it has the biggest tide exchanges on the planet. And so they put the nuclear there because they know a big tide exchange, that'll disperse the nuclear all over the place, kill all the species quicker, Dana. That's a win for the nuclear industry, Dana. We don't need to blow you up, Dana. We just kill all of you with radioactive fallout. That's what we do. We kill everybody in increments over time. And we blame it on your tin cans and your pop bottles and your cardboard. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Who's laughing now? Says the head of the IAEA. Who's laughing now? Like, it's just horrifying. It's just unbelievably horrifying that nuclear power plants, even new ones, are going to be surrounded by farms. That doesn't terrify you. And I see that the crazies are here again. We got poll is going to end right now. Goodbye, poll. It was a good poll tonight. We got skewed again by the pro-nuclear degenerate monsters. No big surprise. Japan had 1,000 tanks in 2013, 1,000 tanks in 2022. Has Japan been filling tanks for the last 9 years? No. No. Let's end the poll. Say the F word, Greta. By the way, we raised $60 towards getting the bike fixed last night, and that was from James L. Lucid, as you know. We thank James for his endless support. We do need people to donate. The links are in the bottom of the description. We're not supposed to be broken down again. That's not acceptable. And I put videos up explaining why we broke down. I broke the windshield with my face. Thank goodness I had my helmet on, which I normally don't. Because I'm only crawling around, but it was minus 17, right? Ease, Blue Jay, thank you, everybody. Give a quick shout out. Dana Nasana, thank you, Dana, for your time. Albert, Peaceware, I only serve one king. Ella, Don Vincent, good night, everybody. Darrell Murray, Richard McCann. Hugs for everybody. John Comana. Have a great night and great day tomorrow. Chelsea. Hope everybody had a good day and a good night tonight and a good day tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. I'll be back tomorrow night for the last show of the week. I hope everybody finds time to join me. Yes. I'm just looking for a few names to do a shout out. Daniel. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. I've been really upset the last couple of days. I don't know if anybody noticed. Probably not. I'm pretty stable. I don't really change much. Jeffrey Brown. He pushed the wrong answer on the poll. That's okay, Jeffrey. 20 push-ups and all is forgiven. Chop, chop, double time. I catch ya. Fukushima and Revelations. Almost through the names. Hopefully I got all the anger out of me today. Victor. SCH. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, good night, everybody. Robert, there we go. We made it. Made it through another shitty fucking show. Get to swearing out of me night. I won't do that anymore for a couple of months. There's links, boys. Folks, we got to raise some money, right? It's snowing out right now. I'm supposed to be in the woods tomorrow morning looking for species. We just missed 2 prime days, and we're going to miss tomorrow too. And we got to get it into the shop. Just the whole thought of it is torture. It's just torture. It's got to get done, though. There's your atoms for peace. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs. Shoots about 1.5 tons a day. A minute, rather. Which is equal to about 44,000 bombs worth of Hiroshima of low-level radioactive fallout in the communities you shoot it into. That's the A-10 Warthog, your atoms for peace. God bless everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great one. Thank you, everybody. If you can donate anything, the 2 links at the bottom of the description are directly to me or my site. You can't go wrong. It's the right thing to do. We desperately need people to stand up right now so we get back out on the trail. Have a great night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Take care.